The cafeteria of the Galactic Military Academy buzzed with conversations in dozens of alien languages. Students from across the known galaxy sat in carefully segregated groups, each species keeping to their own kind. At the far corner, almost hidden behind a pillar, sat Sarah Chen with her simple meal of synthetic protein and water. She kept her eyes down, focusing on her food while the conversations around her grew louder. The Zephyrians, tall, blue-skinned beings with crystalline growths along their arms, discussed combat strategies in their musical language. The Korath, massive reptilian warriors, argued about honor codes while their scales shifted colors with emotion. The Vextai, insectoid beings with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked and chittered about technological advances. None of them paid attention to the small human girl who had somehow ended up in their elite military academy. Sarah had been at the academy for 3 months now, and she still felt like an outsider. Humans were new to the galactic community, having only made contact 5 years ago. Most species viewed them as primitive, barely evolved beyond their home planet. The fact that Sarah was here at all was considered a diplomatic gesture rather than recognition of human capability. "Look at the little mud dweller," whispered Kethvar, a Zephyrian noble whose father commanded a fleet. His crystalline growths pulsed with blue light as he spoke. "She sits alone like the inferior being she is." His friends laughed, their crystals flickering in amusement. Sarah heard every word but continued eating, her face showing no emotion. She had learned early in life that reacting to bullies only made things worse. Commander Thexalon entered the cafeteria, his massive Korath frame causing conversations to quiet. His scales were deep green with gold markings that indicated his high rank. He surveyed the room with yellow eyes that missed nothing. "Attention, cadets!" his voice boomed across the space. "Tomorrow begins the tactical warfare trials. You will be divided into squads and face increasingly difficult scenarios. Your performance will determine your placement in advanced courses and ultimately your career paths." Excited murmurs filled the cafeteria. The trials were legendary, designed to test every aspect of a cadet's abilities. Only the best would advance to become officers in the Galactic Defense Force. "Squad assignments will be posted tonight," Commander Thexalon continued. "Remember, these trials test not just individual skill, but teamwork and leadership. The galaxy needs officers who can work together across species lines." As the commander left, the cafeteria exploded into excited chatter. Students began forming informal alliances, discussing strategies and showing off their abilities. Kethvar created a small light show with his crystals, while a Korath cadet demonstrated his strength by lifting a table with one hand. Sarah finished her meal quietly and headed to her dormitory. The hallways were filled with cadets from various species, all taller and more imposing than her. She had grown used to being overlooked, invisible among beings who could fly, breathe underwater, or lift tremendous weights. Her room was small and sparse, containing only the basic furniture provided by the academy. On her desk sat a worn photograph of her parents and younger brother back on Earth. They had been so proud when she received the invitation to attend the academy. She was the first human selected, chosen more for her test scores than any expectation of success. Sarah sat at her desk and opened her personal tablet, reviewing notes she had taken during classes. While other students focused on physical training and weapons practice, she spent her time studying strategy, logistics, and alien psychology. She had learned that every species had different strengths and weaknesses, different ways of thinking and fighting. The Zephyrians were excellent at aerial combat and energy weapon systems, but their crystalline biology made them vulnerable to certain frequencies. The Korath were incredibly strong and resistant to damage, but their honor-based culture sometimes prevented them from making tactically sound decisions. The Vextai could process multiple data streams simultaneously and were master technicians. but they struggled with creative thinking outside established parameters. A chime from her tablet indicated that squad assignments had been posted. Sarah accessed the Academy network and found her name listed with 4 other cadets. Her heart sank as she read the names. Squad 7 consisted of Kethvar Zelanon, the Zephyrian noble who had been mocking her; Grextar Morthak, a Korath warrior from a famous military family; Zixla Vorth, a Vextai technical specialist; and Lyrian Solfist, an energy being from the ethereal collective who rarely spoke to anyone. Sarah was the only human, and likely the weakest member of the squad by any physical measure. She could already imagine how tomorrow would go. Her squad mates would ignore her input, treat her as dead weight, and probably blame her when things went wrong. But as she studied the profiles of her squad mates, Sarah began to see possibilities. Each of them was skilled in their specialty, but had obvious blind spots. Kethvar was arrogant and used to having his way. Grextar was honorable, but inflexible. Zixla was brilliant, but lacked imagination. Lyrian was powerful, but aloof. Sarah spent the night researching past trial scenarios, studying tactical manuals, and creating contingency plans. She knew she couldn't match her squad mates in raw ability, but she might be able to contribute in ways they hadn't considered. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the assembly point early. Other squads were already gathering, their members greeting each other and discussing strategies. She stood alone, waiting for her squad mates to arrive. Kethvar showed up first, his crystals dim with irritation when he saw Sarah. "Wonderful," he muttered. "We're stuck with the human." Grextar arrived shortly after, his scales a neutral brown color. He nodded politely to both Sarah and Kethvar, but said nothing. His people valued actions over words. Zixla clicked rapidly as she approached, all 4 arms busy adjusting various pieces of equipment. Her compound eyes briefly focused on Sarah before dismissing her as irrelevant. Lyrian materialized last, her energy form shimmering in the morning light. She appeared as a roughly humanoid shape made of golden light, beautiful but distant. "Squad 7. Report to Training Ground Epsilon," announced a mechanical voice over the Academy's communication system. As they walked toward their assigned area, the other squad members began discussing the upcoming trials. Kethvar boasted about his family's military achievements. Grextar spoke of honor and duty. Zixla rattled off statistics about weapon systems and defensive capabilities. None of them asked Sarah for her opinion or included her in their planning. She might as well have been invisible. Training Ground Epsilon was a massive enclosed area that could project any environment through advanced holographic technology. Today it showed a ruined cityscape, with tall buildings reduced to rubble and smoke rising from various locations. Instructor Vaelthi, a spider-like being with 8 arms and multiple eyes, addressed the assembled squads. "Your mission is simple in concept but challenging in execution. Hostile forces have occupied the city center and are holding civilian prisoners. You must infiltrate the area, neutralize the threats, and rescue the civilians. You have 4 hours. The instructor's eyes focused on each squad in turn. You will face multiple enemy types with different capabilities. Success requires coordination, adaptability, and sound tactical thinking. Begin when ready." Squad 7 entered the simulation, and immediately Sarah could see the problems ahead. The cityscape was perfect for ambushes, with countless hiding spots and multiple levels of engagement. The enemy would have every advantage. "We go straight through," Kethvar declared, his crystals beginning to glow with stored energy. "Fast and direct. I'll take point with my energy attacks." "Honorable but foolish," Grextar rumbled. "Better to scout the perimeter first. Understand enemy positions." "Statistical analysis suggests a multi-pronged approach," Zixla clicked rapidly. "I can hack their communication systems while you engage directly." Lyrian said nothing, simply floating above the group like a golden beacon. Sarah cleared her throat. Maybe we should— The human will stay back and observe, Kethvar interrupted. This requires real warriors. Sarah felt familiar anger rising in her chest, but pushed it down. Getting emotional would only confirm their prejudices. Instead, she studied the environment, while her squad mates argued about the best approach. The simulation was incredibly detailed. She could see movement patterns in the windows above, the way debris was scattered to create choke points, and the placement of what looked like sensor equipment. Whoever had designed this scenario understood urban warfare. There, she said quietly, pointing to a seemingly empty building. That's where they're coordinating from. Her squad mates ignored her, having settled on Kethvar's direct assault plan. They moved forward in a loose formation, with the Zephyrian taking point, Grextar covering the right flank, and Zixla working on her technical equipment. Lyrian floated overhead, supposedly providing overwatch. The first attack came within minutes. Energy blasts erupted from multiple positions, forcing the squad to take cover behind a collapsed wall. Kethvar responded with his own energy attacks, his crystals flaring bright blue as he sent bolts of force toward the enemy positions. "Where are they coming from?" Grextar roared, his scales turning deep red with battle fury. "Sensors indicate multiple heat signatures," Zixla reported, "but their positioning makes no tactical sense." Sarah crouched behind cover, watching the battle unfold. Her squad mates were reacting exactly as the enemy had expected. They were fighting the simulation instead of thinking through it. "It's a distraction," she called out. "They're herding us toward the—" An explosion cut off her words as the building behind them erupted in flames. The enemy had used the firefight to move into position for an ambush. Suddenly, Squad 7 was caught between two forces with no good avenue of retreat. Kethvar's crystals blazed brighter as he increased his rate of fire, but the enemy had good cover and superior positioning. Grextar charged toward one group of attackers, his natural armor absorbing their energy blasts, but he was quickly outnumbered. Zixla's technical skills were useless in a straight firefight, and Lyrian seemed reluctant to engage directly. "We're pinned down," Kethvar admitted, his aristocratic composure beginning to crack. "Their positioning is too good." Sarah studied the battlefield, her mind racing through possibilities. The enemy had made one mistake in their ambush. They had assumed Squad 7 would react like typical military units, focusing on firepower and direct engagement. But what if they didn't? "Grextar, can you create a distraction?" she asked. "Something loud and obvious?" The Korath warrior looked surprised that the human was giving suggestions. "What do you have in mind?" "Trust me. Zixla, I need you to overload your scanner array. Create as much electronic noise as possible." "That would blind us to enemy movements," the Vextai protested. "Exactly," Sarah said. "Lyrian, can you generate a light burst, something bright enough to overwhelm optical sensors?" The energy being flickered, perhaps considering the request. "For what purpose?" "To level the playing field," Sarah explained quickly. "They're using our predictability against us. If we remove their advantages—" "This is madness," Kethvar interrupted. "We should focus our firepower and break through their lines." Another explosion rocked their position, and Sarah saw that they had maybe minutes before the enemy closed the trap completely. Her squad mates still didn't trust her judgment, but she could see the solution clearly. "Fine," she said, pulling out her sidearm. "Follow my lead, or don't, but I'm ending this." Before anyone could stop her, Sarah sprinted from cover, running directly toward the enemy's strongest position. Her squad mates shouted in alarm, thinking she had panicked or lost her mind. But Sarah had counted on their reaction. As she ran, she fired her weapon not at the enemies, but at specific structural points she had identified earlier. Support beams, already weakened by the urban warfare scenario, began to collapse. The enemy's attention focused on her, exactly as she had planned. Their fire followed her movement, which took them away from covering the areas where her squad mates were positioned. That's when Sarah's real plan began to unfold. As debris began falling from her targeted shots, it created new cover points and blocked several enemy sight lines. The carefully planned ambush positions became isolated pockets that could be taken one at a time. "Now," she called to her squad, "split up and take them from different angles. They can't cover everything at once." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Grexitar let out a war cry and charged toward an isolated enemy position. Zixala began targeting their communication equipment. Kethavar finally understood the plan and began systematically destroying the enemy's elevated positions. Lyrian's golden form blazed brighter as she rained energy down on enemy troops who had lost their cover. The ambush that should have destroyed Squad 7 turned into a rout. Within 10 minutes, they had neutralized all enemy forces in the area and were advancing toward the civilian rescue point. As they regrouped, Sarah's squad mates looked at her with something approaching respect. Her plan had worked perfectly, turning their disadvantages into advantages and the enemy's strengths into weaknesses. "How did you know that would work?" Kethavar asked, his earlier arrogance replaced by curiosity. "I paid attention," Sarah replied simply. "You were all so focused on your individual strengths that you missed what the enemy was actually doing." Grexitar's scales shifted to a warm orange color, indicating approval. "The human sees clearly. We should listen to her counsel." "Agreed," Zixala clicked. "My analysis was incomplete. Her tactical assessment proved superior." Even Lyrian seemed more solid somehow, her energy form gaining definition. "You think differently than we do," she observed. "It is useful." Sarah felt a small smile cross her face. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt like she might actually belong here. But the trials were just beginning, and she knew her squad mates' newfound respect would be tested in the challenges ahead. "The real test is still coming," she said, checking her equipment. "This was just the warm-up." As Squad 7 moved deeper into the simulation, Sarah's mind was already working on the next problem. She had proven she could contribute, but now she had to show she could lead. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if there were observers taking notes on the quiet human girl who had just outmaneuvered their elite training scenario. The galaxy was watching, even if they didn't know it yet. The second day of trials brought Squad 7 to a different kind of challenge. The simulation had shifted from urban warfare to a space station environment, complete with artificial gravity, narrow corridors, and the constant threat of hull breach. Other squads had already entered their own scenarios, and Sarah could hear distant explosions and combat sounds echoing through the training facility. Squad 7 gathered in their preparation area, studying the mission briefings on their tablets. The scenario was complex. A research station had gone silent, suspected of being overrun by hostile alien parasites. Their job was to investigate, determine the threat level, and either contain or eliminate the danger. Sarah noticed her squad mates now included her in their planning discussions, a marked change from the previous day. Kethavar still dominated the conversation, but he at least acknowledged her presence. Grexitar actively sought her input on tactical matters. Zixala shared technical data with her, and Lyrian responded when Sarah addressed her directly. "The station layout favors defenders," Sarah observed, studying the deck plans. "Whoever designed this knew that small forces could hold choke points against larger ones." "The parasites are likely not strategic thinkers," Zixala clicked, her compound eyes processing multiple data streams. "Most hostile biologicals rely on overwhelming numbers rather than tactics." "Don't underestimate them," Grexitar warned, his scales shifting to a cautious brown pattern. "My people have faced creatures that seemed mindless but proved dangerously cunning." Kethavar's crystals pulsed with confidence. "Whatever we face, our combined abilities should prove sufficient. Energy weapons are effective against most biological threats." Sarah frowned at something in the briefing materials. The research station's crew manifest showed specialists in xenobiology, quantum physics, and dimensional research. That combination suggested they weren't just studying ordinary alien life forms. "What if they weren't overrun?" she asked quietly. Her squad mates stopped their discussion and looked at her. "What do you mean?" Lyrian asked, her golden form flickering with interest. "Look at the research data," Sarah said, highlighting sections on her tablet. They were studying interdimensional parasites, creatures that exist partially outside normal space. What if the crew didn't lose control of them? What if they're working together? Cathvar's crystals dimmed with skepticism. Humans would never cooperate with hostile parasites. It goes against all logical behavior. Maybe, Sarah said, but the research notes mention that these parasites enhance their hosts' cognitive abilities while feeding on neural energy. For scientists obsessed with breakthrough discoveries, that might seem like an acceptable trade. Grextar's scales shifted to deep red, a sign of concern among his people. If the crew is compromised but still intelligent, they'll use the station's systems against us. Environmental controls, security doors, internal defenses, Zixla added rapidly. The tactical situation becomes far more complex. Sarah nodded. We need to assume we're facing enhanced humans with alien capabilities, not mindless monsters. As they entered the simulation, Sarah immediately noticed details that supported her theory. The station appeared abandoned at first glance, but the life support systems were still functioning perfectly. Emergency lighting was operational, and there were no signs of the chaos that would accompany a parasitic outbreak. "Too clean," Grextar rumbled, his warrior instincts agreeing with Sarah's assessment. The squad moved carefully through the outer corridors, their weapons ready but encountering no immediate threats. Zixla monitored internal communications, while Lyrian extended her energy senses to detect life forms. Cathvar kept his crystals charged but dim, ready to provide devastating firepower if needed. Sarah studied the station layout as they advanced, noting which routes would be most easily defended and where potential ambushes could be waiting. Her squad mates had learned to trust her tactical insights, but she could sense their nervousness about facing an unknown threat. The first sign of wrongness came when they reached the main research laboratory. Equipment was still running, experiments continued in automated sequences, but the research data showed modifications that no sane scientist would attempt. "They've been enhancing the parasites," Zixla reported, her mandibles clicking with agitation. "Genetic modifications, neural interface adaptations, symbiotic rather than purely parasitic relationships." "This confirms your theory," Lyrian said to Sarah, her energy form becoming more defined as she focused. The crew chose to become hosts. Sarah examined the research notes more closely. The head scientist, Dr. Marcus Webb, had documented the progression of human parasite integration. Early subjects had shown improved reflexes, enhanced pattern recognition, and accelerated learning capabilities. But later entries became increasingly erratic, suggesting that the parasites were changing their hosts in fundamental ways. "They're still here," she said quietly. "Watching us." "How can you be certain?" Cathvar asked, his crystals beginning to pulse with combat readiness. Sarah pointed to subtle details throughout the lab. Personal items arranged in defensive positions, equipment modified to serve as weapons, research data that had been deliberately altered to mislead intruders. "They want us to think they lost control, that this is a simple containment mission, but they're planning something more sophisticated." As if responding to her words, the station's lights suddenly dimmed to emergency levels. Blast doors began sealing throughout the facility, cutting off their retreat routes. The environmental systems shifted to minimal life support, creating an atmosphere of pressure and urgency. "Welcome, visitors," came a voice over the communication system. It sounded human, but with odd harmonics that suggested something else was influencing the speech patterns. "We've been expecting you." Sarah's squad took defensive positions, but she noticed they were looking to her for leadership rather than following their usual hierarchies. Somehow, during their short time together, she had become their tactical coordinator. "Dr. Webb, I presume?" Sarah said, activating her communicator. Laughter echoed through the speakers, but it contained too many harmonics to be entirely human. Dr. Webb was limited. "We are so much more now. The parasites you've come to contain have shown us possibilities beyond normal existence. Enhanced cognitive abilities come with a cost," Sarah replied, buying time while she studied the station schematics. "The research data shows progressive neural degradation. A small price for transcendence," the voice replied, "but you wouldn't understand. Your primitive minds can't grasp what we've become." Sarah noticed that Grexatar was becoming agitated, his scales shifting to aggressive patterns. The Korath warrior code made it difficult for him to tolerate being trapped and taunted. Kethvar's crystals were growing brighter with each passing moment, and even Lyrian seemed to be gathering energy for combat. "They're trying to provoke us into making mistakes," she warned her squad mates. "Don't let them control the situation." Through the station's internal sensors, Sarah could see movement in the corridors around them. The enhanced crew members were positioning themselves for an ambush, but their movements showed the precise coordination that normal humans couldn't achieve. "Zixala, can you access the environmental controls?" she asked. "Partially," the Vextai replied. "They've locked out most functions, but I can manipulate some secondary systems." Sarah studied the station layout again, formulating a plan. The enhanced crew had advantages in coordination and knowledge of the station, but they were still limited by human biology and the need to protect their research. "Here's what we're going to do," she said, outlining her strategy quickly. "They expect us to either charge forward or try to escape. Instead, we're going to give them what they think they want." Her plan was risky and required precise timing, but it played to each squad member's strengths while avoiding the enemy's advantages. Kethvar would create a massive energy discharge that would temporarily overload the station's sensors. During the confusion, Grextar would break through to the central command area while Zixala took control of critical systems. Lyrian would provide mobile fire support, and Sarah would coordinate their movements. "The humans' strategy has merit," Grextar acknowledged, "but the danger is considerable." "All worthy battles carry risk," Sarah replied. "But we have advantages they don't expect." "Such as?" Kethvar asked. "We think like a team," Sarah explained. "Their enhanced coordination comes from the parasites, but it makes them predictable. They'll respond as a single organism rather than as individuals making tactical decisions." As they prepared to execute the plan, Sarah felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders. Her squad mates were trusting her judgment completely, something that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. "Execute," she commanded. Kethvar's crystals erupted in a blinding display of energy that overloaded every sensor on the station. In the moments of confusion that followed, Grexatar's massive frame smashed through reinforced barriers, while Zixala's technical expertise gained them access to critical systems. The enhanced crew responded exactly as Sarah had predicted, converging on their position with inhuman coordination. But Lyrian was already in motion, her energy form providing devastating fire support while remaining mobile enough to avoid counterattacks. Sarah coordinated the assault through their communication system, calling out enemy positions and directing her squad mates' efforts. She could see the battle developing exactly as she had foreseen, with one crucial exception. Dr. Webb himself appeared in the central command area, his body visibly altered by the parasitic enhancement. His movements were too quick and precise to be entirely human, and Sarah could see the alien intelligence behind his eyes. "You think you understand tactical thinking," he said, his voice carrying multiple harmonics. "But we process information on levels you can't imagine." "Maybe," Sarah replied. "But you've forgotten something important about humans, which is, we're excellent at being unpredictable." Instead of engaging Dr. Webb directly, Sarah triggered the environmental control sequence that Zixla had prepared. The station's artificial gravity began fluctuating wildly, creating conditions that favored her squad's diverse abilities over the enhanced crew's coordinated movements. In the zero-gravity phases, Lyrian could move with perfect freedom, while the enhanced humans struggled with their increased mass. During high-gravity periods, Grextar's natural strength gave him significant advantages. Kethvar's energy attacks became more effective as the enhanced crew lost their precise coordination. "Impossible," Dr. Webb snarled as his perfect coordination began breaking down. "The parasites calculated every tactical possibility." "That's your mistake," Sarah said, using her mag boots to maintain position while her squad mates systematically dismantled the enhanced crew's defenses. "You trusted alien intelligence over human intuition." The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Sarah's squad worked together with increasing precision, each member adapting to the changing conditions while maintaining their tactical objectives. The enhanced crew, despite their superior individual capabilities, couldn't match the squad's flexibility. When the simulation ended, Squad 7 stood victorious in the command center, while the enhanced crew's positions had been completely neutralized. The civilian rescue mission had become a complex tactical engagement, but Sarah's leadership had turned potential disaster into decisive victory. As they exited the simulation, Instructor Vaelti was waiting with what might have been approval on her alien features. "Interesting approach," she said, her multiple eyes focusing on Sarah. "Most squads either failed to identify the true threat or attempted direct confrontation. Your tactical assessment was superior." Sarah felt her squad mates' eyes on her, and she realized that something fundamental had changed in their relationship. They weren't just tolerating her presence anymore. They were genuinely respecting her abilities. "The trials continue tomorrow," Instructor Vaelti announced. "Final scenarios will test everything you've learned. Rest well." As they walked back to their quarters, Kethvar fell into step beside Sarah. His crystals pulsed with thoughtful patterns rather than the arrogant displays she had seen earlier. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I judged you based on species prejudice rather than individual merit." "We all make mistakes," Sarah replied. "What matters is learning from them." Grextar's scales showed warm orange patterns. "Honor is earned through actions, not birthright. You have earned mine." Even Zixla seemed different, her rapid clicking now including what Sarah recognized as expressions of respect in Vextai culture. "Your analytical capabilities exceed statistical expectations for your species." Lyrian's energy form flickered with what might have been amusement. "You think in ways that surprise even me. Tomorrow should be interesting." That night, Sarah sat in her quarters reviewing the day's events. 2 successful missions had proven her worth to her squad mates, but she knew the real test was still coming. The final trials would push them beyond their current limits, and she would need to be ready for whatever challenges the Academy had prepared. Her tablet chimed with a message from home. Her parents and brother were proud of her progress, though they couldn't fully understand what she was experiencing. Earth seemed very far away as she looked out at the alien stars, visible through her small window. But for the first time since arriving at the Academy, Sarah felt like she belonged here. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she would face them with squad mates who trusted her leadership and abilities that had proven themselves against the galaxy's best training scenarios. The quiet human girl was becoming something more, and the galaxy was starting to notice. The final day of the tactical warfare trials arrived with an atmosphere of nervous anticipation throughout the academy. Sarah woke early, as had become her habit, and found the common areas filled with cadets from all species discussing rumors about the final challenge. Some claimed it would be a massive space battle simulation. Others insisted it would be a diplomatic crisis requiring careful negotiation. A few whispered about something called the Omega Protocol, though no one seemed to know what that meant. Squad 7 gathered for breakfast, their dynamic completely transformed from just 3 days earlier. Where once they had sat in uncomfortable silence with barely concealed hostility, now they functioned as a cohesive unit. Kethvar consulted with Sarah on tactical matters. Grextar sought her opinion on honor-based decisions. Zixla shared technical insights freely. Lyrian actually initiated conversations. "Any theories about today's challenge?" Kethvar asked as they finished their meal. Sarah had been thinking about exactly that question. The pattern suggests escalation, urban warfare, then confined space tactics, now something that combines everything we've learned. "Multiple environment engagement," Grextar suggested, his scales showing thoughtful green patterns. "Possibly," Sarah said, "but I think it's more than that. The Academy wants to see how we handle the unexpected." Zixla's mandibles clicked with curiosity. Define unexpected. Before Sarah could answer, the Academy's communication system activated with an announcement that sent murmurs through the cafeteria. "All squads report to the Grand Assembly Hall immediately. The final trial begins now." The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest space in the Academy, capable of holding thousands of cadets from dozens of species. Today, it buzzed with nervous energy as squads filed in and took their assigned positions. Sarah noticed that many squad formations had changed over the past 3 days. Some had dissolved entirely due to internal conflicts. Others had reformed with new leadership structures. Commander Thexalon took the center stage, his massive Korath frame commanding instant attention. Behind him, holographic displays showed star charts and tactical readouts that Sarah didn't immediately recognize. "Cadets," his voice boomed across the assembly, "for 3 days you have faced simulated challenges designed to test your abilities. Today, you face something different." The holographic displays changed, showing what appeared to be real-time sensor data from multiple star systems. Sarah felt a chill as she recognized the tactical significance of the formations she was seeing. 6 hours ago, an unknown alien fleet entered Galactic Defense Force space without authorization or identification. They have ignored all communication attempts and are advancing toward inhabited systems. This is not a simulation. The assembly hall fell silent, except for the whispered translations occurring between species with different primary languages. Sarah's mind raced as she processed the implications. The Defense Force has mobilized its available fleets, but they are hours away from intercept positions. The only vessels in position to gather intelligence and potentially delay the intruders are Academy training ships with skeleton crews. Sarah saw where this was heading, and the magnitude of it took her breath away. Today's trial is real combat. Selected squads will board training vessels and conduct reconnaissance missions against an unknown enemy. You will be operating under actual military command, following real tactical orders, and facing genuine danger. Commander Thexalon's yellow eyes swept across the assembled cadets. "Squad leaders, report to the tactical briefing room immediately. All other personnel prepare for potential deployment." Sarah felt her squadmates' eyes turn toward her, and she realized with surprise that they considered her their squad leader. Over the past 3 days, she had naturally fallen into that role, but having it officially recognized was both thrilling and terrifying. "Go," Grextar rumbled. "We will prepare for whatever comes." The tactical briefing room contained 20 squad leaders from the most successful teams in the trials. Sarah found herself surrounded by beings she had only observed from a distance. Veltar Strongarm, a legendary Korath warrior whose family had commanded fleets for generations. Synthesis Nexus Prime, a Vextai tactical genius with computational abilities that bordered on artificial intelligence. Aurora Windcaller, a Zephyrian noble whose energy manipulation skills were considered unmatched. And then there was Sarah Chen, the human girl who had somehow earned her place among the galactic elite. Admiral Kesthak entered the room, her crystalline Zephyrian form radiating authority. Her crystals pulsed with complex patterns that Sarah recognized as high-level tactical thinking. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," the Admiral began without preamble. "The unknown fleet consists of at least 40 vessels of unknown configuration. They're maintaining formation and heading directly for the Tertia system, which contains 3 billion inhabitants." Holographic displays showed the tactical situation in 3 dimensions. Sarah studied the enemy formation, noting details that seemed familiar but couldn't quite place. "Your mission is intelligence gathering with secondary objectives of harassment and delay. You will not engage in direct combat unless absolutely necessary. We need to know what these beings want and what they're capable of." Admiral Kesthak's crystals shifted to more urgent patterns. "Squad assignments are based on trial performance and tactical specialization. Squad 7 will investigate the fleet's trailing elements and attempt to capture communication intercepts." Sarah felt her heart racing as the reality hit her. This wasn't a simulation or training exercise. She would be leading her squad into potential combat against an enemy that had the entire Galactic Defense Force concerned. "Squad leaders, return to your teams and prepare for immediate deployment. Departure in 30 minutes. As Sarah rejoined her squad mates, she found them already suited up in full combat gear. Their expressions were serious but determined. Whatever was about to happen, they were ready to face it together. "Real combat," Kethvar said, his crystals pulsing with controlled energy. "This is what we trained for." "The enemy is unknown," Zixala added, her 4 arms checking weapon systems with mechanical precision. "No tactical data, no behavioral patterns, no identified weaknesses." "Makes it interesting," Grextar rumbled, his scales showing the deep red patterns of a warrior preparing for battle. Lyrian's energy form seemed more solid than Sarah had ever seen it. "We trust your judgment," she said simply. "Lead us." Their assigned vessel was the GDF Horizon, a Corvette-class ship designed for reconnaissance and rapid response. The skeleton crew consisted of a Korath captain, a Vextai navigation specialist, and 2 Zephyrian engineers. They welcomed Squad 7 aboard with professional courtesy, but made it clear that this was Sarah's mission to command. As the Horizon departed the academy, Sarah found herself on the bridge studying sensor data about their target. The unknown fleet maintained perfect formation at speeds that suggested advanced propulsion technology. Their ships were massive, each one easily 3 times the size of the largest Defense Force vessels. "Estimated time to intercept, 6 hours, reported the navigation specialist. "Enemy fleet maintaining current course and speed." Sarah used the travel time to study everything they knew about the intruders. The lack of information was almost complete. No communication attempts had been answered. No identification signals detected. Even their energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases. "Captain," she said to the Korath commanding officer, "have there been any similar incidents in the past?" Captain Morthak's scales showed thoughtful patterns. "Nothing identical. But there are legends among my people of fleets that appear from the deep void, speaking no known language and following incomprehensible purposes." That triggered a memory for Sarah. During her research on galactic history, she had encountered references to something called the Silent Wanderers, fleets of unknown origin that appeared periodically throughout galactic history, observed various civilizations, and then vanished without explanation. "Could they be explorers rather than invaders?" she asked. "Possible," Captain Morthak acknowledged, "but their approach vector suggests military precision." As they approached the intercept point, Sarah gathered her squad for final preparations. Remember, our primary mission is intelligence gathering. We observe, record, and report. Combat only if we're directly threatened. And if they are hostile? Grextar asked. Then we do everything possible to delay them while the defense force gets into position, Sarah replied. 40 ships against 1 corvette isn't a fight we can win through firepower. But perhaps through cleverness, Lyrian observed. As the horizon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the unknown fleet's sensor range, Sarah got her first clear look at their targets. The ships were unlike anything she had ever seen. They appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and what looked like living surfaces. No visible weapons, but energy readings suggested incredible power generation capabilities. "By the crystals," whispered one of the Zephyrian engineers. "Those aren't ships. They're creatures." Sarah studied the sensor data more carefully and realized the engineer was correct. The vessels showed biological signatures mixed with technological elements. They were living ships, possibly semi-sentient themselves. "New mission parameters," she announced. "We're not dealing with a conventional fleet. These are biological vessels, possibly with their own intelligence." "That changes the tactical situation significantly," Kethvar observed. "It explains the perfect formation," Zixla added. "Hive-mind coordination rather than electronic communication." As they observed from long range, Sarah noticed something that made her reconsider everything they thought they knew about the situation. The fleet wasn't heading directly for the inhabited systems. Their course would take them past Tertius into empty space beyond. "They're not invading," she said suddenly. "They're migrating." Her squadmates and the bridge crew looked at her with surprise. "Explain," Captain Morthak demanded. "Look at the formation. It's not a battle fleet, it's a protection formation. The larger vessels are surrounding smaller ones, and their course takes them past inhabited systems, not toward them." Sarah activated the communication system. "This is Corvette Horizon to Unknown Fleet. We see you are traveling through our space. Do you require assistance or provisions for your journey?" For long moments, there was no response. Then the communication system activated with sounds unlike anything in the galactic databases. Musical tones, harmonic frequencies, and patterns that suggested intelligence but not conventional language. "Zixla, can you analyze that?" Sarah asked. The Vextai's 4 arms worked frantically over her equipment. "It's mathematical," she said excitedly. "Prime number sequences, geometric progressions, universal constants. They're trying to establish common understanding." Sarah smiled as understanding dawned. "They're not hostile. They're trying to communicate but don't know our languages." Over the next hour, Squad 7 worked with the ship's crew to establish basic communication with the alien fleet. What emerged was a story that changed Sarah's understanding of the galaxy itself. The beings called themselves the Chorus, a collective intelligence of living ships that traveled between galaxies. They had been journeying for millions of years, searching for something they called the Song of Origin. Their passage through Galactic Defense Force space was purely coincidental. "They're not a threat," Sarah reported to command. "They're travelers who got lost and ended up in our galaxy by accident." Admiral Kezethak's response was skeptical. "How can you be certain?" "Because they shared their navigation data with us," Sarah explained. "Their intended destination is a galaxy cluster 40 million light-years away. They're asking for directions." The resolution of what could have been a major galactic crisis took the form of the most unusual diplomatic exchange in recorded history. The Defense Force provided the Chorus with updated star charts and safe passage coordinates, while the Chorus shared mathematical and philosophical concepts that would advance galactic understanding by centuries. As the Horizon returned to the Academy, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few days. She had gone from being an ignored outsider to leading successful missions and making first contact with an entirely new form of life. "You did well," Captain Morthak told her as they prepared to dock. "Command has taken notice of your performance." Back at the Academy, the resolution of the crisis had transformed the atmosphere completely. News of Squad 7's successful first contact spread through the student body, and Sarah found herself receiving congratulations from cadets who had previously ignored her existence. "The quiet human who saved the galaxy," Kethvar said with genuine admiration. "I suspect this is only the beginning of your accomplishments." "We all contributed," Sarah replied. "Success belonged to the squad, not any individual." "Spoken like a true leader," Grextar rumbled approvingly. A week later, graduation ceremony for the tactical warfare trials brought together cadets, instructors, and military officials from across the galaxy. Squad 7 stood together as Admiral Kezithak announced the results. "This year's trials produced exceptional graduates," she began. "But one squad demonstrated capabilities that exceeded all expectations." Sarah felt her heart racing as the Admiral's crystals focused on their group. Squad 7 showed tactical innovation, adaptive leadership, and diplomatic insight that prevented what could have been a catastrophic conflict. "They are awarded highest honors and immediate advancement to Officer Candidate School." The applause was thunderous, coming from beings who had initially dismissed the quiet human girl as irrelevant. Sarah looked at her squad mates and saw the pride in their expressions, not just for their success, but for what they had accomplished together. After the ceremony, Sarah found herself approached by officials from multiple military branches, research institutions, and diplomatic corps. Her unique combination of tactical thinking and communication skills had made her one of the most sought-after graduates in Academy history. But as she stood looking out at the alien stars that had become familiar over the past months, Sarah knew her real journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers that no one yet understood. And somewhere out there, new challenges were waiting for the reserved human girl who had learned to lead among the stars. Kethvar appeared beside her, his crystals pulsing with warm patterns. "Any regrets about coming to the Academy?" Sarah smiled, thinking about the scared girl who had arrived just months earlier. "None at all. This is exactly where I belong." And as the stars wheeled overhead, Sarah Chen prepared for whatever adventures awaited the human who had earned her place among the galactic elite, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the quiet intelligence that others overlook until it's too late to underestimate it.